Would you like to know the 4 defining attributes to overcoming the virus of victimhood? If so, hang on. That's what we're talking about right here on the lifestyle.org podcast. I'm here today with David Dennis, the author of the new book called Gameness, Land on Your Feet, Not on Your Feelings. I love that title, David.
Oh, thank you so much. We're great to be with you today and all your listeners.
It's great to have you here. Now, you are going to be talking about gameness, which, you know, a lot of people talk about mere resilience, but you see resilience and gameness as 2 very different things. Define that for me.
Resilience, as important as it is, and we all know it is, Roy, is in my mind, it's more about bouncing back, and I see gameness as bouncing forward.
And so, I love that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I know a lot of people will look at resilience and say, I'm just not giving up. I'm not giving up, and I'm still moving forward. But a lot of that is just resilience is just about not going backwards. You're staying where you are. So I love this. How did you come up with the word gameness to represent bouncing forward?
You know, it's really I got fascinated with this word in the process of writing this book, which originally started, as you probably noted in the book, as a gift that I was writing for our 5 kids. They after shared some of the writings with them, they really pushed me to turn it into a book and share it with the public. So I did. And I wanted to leave something with our kids because I never got to have a conversation with my dad. As a kid, I shared some of that in the story. That's not what the book is about, but I shared a little bit about losing my family early on in my life. And that was always a hole in my life. I never really had that conversation with my dad. So I told my kids this was that conversation I never got to have with my dad. It's something I wanted to leave with them. And really what I was pushing myself for was to come up with what would I leave for them that would be, in my opinion, the most important thing I could share with them that would provide them the best opportunity they're going to have to live their life to their fullest potential. And so the more I read and the more I dug, I really wanted to come up with one word. And after a lot of research, the word that really gripped me was this word gameness. And it's an old word that really was more popular back in the 1800s, and it's kind of dropped out of our vocabulary. But after I read the definition of it and those 4 defining attributes of gameness, that I really created the 4 sections of the book: never quit mindset, resoluteness to purpose, and fighting spirit, and the will required to act beyond your feelings. I really felt like those were the things most necessary for me to share with our kids, to give them that kind of mindset for living their life to their fullest potential. And so gameness is a word, and I'll pause if you have another question, but I can share with you a little bit more about where the word gameness came from for me.
Yeah, definitely. Go for it.
You know, gameness, I love that definition for one thing, because using the word implies immediately, with those 4 defining attributes, it infers something we all know to be true, and that is life is unsure. You know, it's unfair. And it's oftentimes unpleasant. It's certainly unpredictable. And we also know we're fallen people. We live in a fallen world, and every day adversity is going to knock at our door and demand something of us. And so the question is, are we going to demand something of adversity? And that's really what gameness is. And it's saying, when problems come my way, and as they will every day, we either view problems as, gosh, I want to avoid them having power over me, or we have that's really resilience. I don't want them to take me out. But the question you got to ask yourself is, are you going to demand something of your problem? Which for me, and what gameness means is, are our problems going to create and grow power in us versus having power over us? So are we going to walk away from our problems or through our problems and get better, smarter, stronger, more resourceful, more creative on the other side of it because we went through it, not in spite of them?
I love that. Now, many people watching or listening to this podcast would say, yeah, it's easy for you to say. You probably haven't been through all that much. You could say, just suck it up, Buttercup. It's time to it's time to get to work. But you actually have a lot of credibility in my book. And that's because you were not born with a silver spoon in your mouth. You didn't get to even grow up with your own parents. You were raised by other people. Tell me about your experience of as a child losing your parents and then having to decide what do I do with my life that's not anything that you would have scripted or dreamt of.
Yeah, and I appreciate you asking the question, Roy. And I purposely, this isn't a book about my life story and about how bad I had it or anything like that. I think very few people have lived a life worthy of writing a book about themselves. It certainly would exclude me, but the circumstances that I was born into did introduce me to adversity at an early age. By the age of 5, my dad had passed away. At age 4, our mother, that was her second husband to lose at a pretty young age, both tragic deaths. Uh, and she just cratered. She had no high school education, much less college, no job skills training. My dad was a construction worker. We just followed the construction jobs around the country and, living in hotel rooms, really. And so in those early years, and she just could not get out from under her addiction to alcoholism that she really relied on to kind of self-medicate after those losses. And in her own life, her own father abandoned her as a young girl, just walked out one day with her and her 5 siblings, never came back. They never saw him again. Her own mother died when she was a young girl. Kind of, she and her siblings raised each other and the neighbors helped. So a lot of trauma, no education, extreme poverty was really her history. And then these were kind of the final blows for her. So tragically, she eventually she fell asleep one night, drank herself to the point of inebriation, and passed out drunk one night and burned to death in a fire in her own bed after we had been removed. But Child Protective Services stepped in after our dad died during that next year, put us in different foster homes. We got reunited out of those homes and raised by the same family, got a second chance. And so while it was a lot of trauma and it was a challenging time, I often tell folks that I work with and a lot of our young people that I work with that two of the greatest things that I've really built my life on as foundation pillars of my life came from that adversity, which is, once again, what Gameness is all about. It's not just surviving that adversity, but saying, hey, how can I capitalize on that adversity and how can I grow power in my life? And the power it grew in my life didn't happen immediately. I struggled as a kid, seeking acceptance, fearing that this family that I've been placed in could fall apart too, anxious my entire childhood, couldn't make peace with it, sought to please people, was wanted attention, approval, fearing rejection again. That was my biggest hurt. And so, on until 2 years out of high school, really rebelled, and just really no direction in my life, no values really, and really came to a point of crisis in my life and just miserable, sick of my life. And that's where I really prayed a desperation prayer to God. And we could talk about that in a minute. But two of the things that really hit me as I began to get my life turned around and go this new direction in my life with purpose, the two things I found to harvest from my adversity and not be a victim of it anymore was, one of the greatest lessons we can all learn is there are no sure things in life. It's just such an important lesson, and not to have an entitlement or a sense that there is. And so I learned that by age 5, that there are no sure things. So as hard as it was, wow, what a gift to get at age 5. So what that created in me was two things. One, an overwhelming sense of gratitude, because I realized you can lose not just some things close to you. You can lose everything, in just like that. So I thought, wow, every day I get to live and every day I have a family. It was something I was grateful for. I think in a much higher sense than I would have. The second thing it gave me was because I realized you could lose things in your life. It gave me a really strong sense of urgency. So it causes me to, and it's on my entire life, it's been that way, to not waste a day and to really make the most of the opportunities that I've been given. and to live my life to its fullest potentials, which is really a passion of mine. My personal life mission, apart from my higher purpose, which is to seek to glorify God in my life, is to advance the potential and purpose of others. So, but it really came out of my adversity, and so it's given me a real passion for, as I put at the banner on the top of the book, a real passion for helping people find the advantages in their adversity. And I know that sounds cliche-ish, and I hesitated to put that on the book, but that truly is. I love the verse in the Bible in Romans 8:28 that says that God is committed to working all things together for good to those who love him and are committed to his purposes. But what I love about that verse is it doesn't say that all things are good. It says he's committed to working with us to work them all together for good. And that's a
Yeah.
lot of Gameness is all about.
That's huge. In the people I work with and coach, we call what you did, our technical term is reframing.
Yes.
And to be able to take all of this bad stuff, all of these things that people typically get into this victim feedback loop of why did that happen to me? Why did my friends didn't have to go through that? These people are jerks and they didn't have to go through it. Why? Why me? Why? And it actually, for a lot of people, drives them away from solution, and it drives them into, well, I guess life sucks. I guess, I wasn't made to be successful. And many people turn to medicating the pain through substances, and it really leads people to a spiral. But it sounds like for you, even from a very early age, you felt this sense of, you know what, this is something usable for me and for my sense of purpose in helping other people live their best life as well.
Well said. I mean, I couldn't say it really any better than that. And one of the things that happened for me, Roy, was when I went to graduate school, and in my graduate studies is marriage family therapy, and I became a therapist. I did private practice counseling with individuals and families and couples for probably 10 years. I ultimately ended up in running social services and human services organizations over time, but I kept doing private practice actually for several years part-time after that. I really like to refer to, before the coaching became popular, I really shifted my focus in counseling to coaching. And the reason is this. One night I was on my way home from counseling, and what you just said was something I really struggled with, and that is my intake forms for counseling in those days I kind of took with me from graduate school. And the majority of the focus of those forms in your first few sessions, which unintentionally a lot of times ends up being way too many sessions, was what prompted you to come to counseling? What was the pain that brought you here? What were the painful circumstances? What were the negative events? You had a bad boss, you had a bad marriage, you got fired, things that you didn't get what you wanted, whatever it was, like you just said. And not intentionally, obviously, folks don't mean to get there, but it's a slippery slope. And so before long, I found myself in these sessions, we were talking about their past incessantly. And I noticed, on the way home one night, it just dawned on me, I'm like, there's not one question on my intake forms about where would you like to go with your life? How would you like to feel in your life? And what's your purpose in life? No, none of those questions were there. So I changed my forms and I put in my forms, what is your life purpose? And I have to tell you, it not only caught clients off guard, some of them really kind of got frustrated with me, because that's something a lot of people don't think about, but it changed my whole approach to counseling. We began, because it is important. I love what Kierkegaard says, life must be understood backwards. It's so important to understand our family of origin issues. It's so important to learn what those hot buttons are for us and those things that can trip us up and sabotage us from our past. So it's good to know that. We have to know that. But it says life must be understood backwards, but it must be lived forward. And that's that second section of my book is, resoluteness to a purpose. Like, okay, so the rest of the canvas hadn't been painted on. What is your vision for your life? What's in front of you? Too many times we ourselves and those we work with, we start seeing those we work with, and sometimes ourselves, as more of a problem to be solved. Even we see days like that, rather than a potential to be realized. And there's a huge difference there. And so what I try to do with people when I'm working with them or coaching people, this first section of the book is this: the never quit spirit, the never quit spirits. That is important because it's important. First, don't quit where you are. You've got to upgrade your perspective, because your perspective, managing your perspective, means you learn to see things better before you can actually see better things.
Yes.
And so, that's where it starts. Otherwise, you do become a victim.
Yeah, I agree. I've said for about 2 decades now that people have to choose to be one of two people groups, generally speaking. You either have to choose to be a victim or you need to choose to be a victor.
Wow.
And there's only two types of people in the world in a general sense. There are people who the horrible events in their life they look at as I'm a victim, and they get stuck in the victim of the virus of victimhood. Or you can say, why did these things happen to me? Now, I love what you've done. You've taken your experience, which you've just given a nutshell, but in the nutshell of your life that you shared, there is an ocean of pain that you had to endure to truly get to where you're living out your life purpose, your calling right now. And a lot of people that I work with, I'm sure a lot of people that you work with, when they're talking about the pain of the past, the thing that they don't understand is that the pain of their past makes them qualified for the purpose of the present. You as a therapist and also as the CEO of one of the largest nonprofits in the U.S., helping people, if it had not been for all this pain of your past, you would not be qualified to be doing what you're doing at the level that you're doing it.
It's, and I'll tell you something. So I 100% agree. I love your word victor. That's a great word for gameness too, in my opinion. I love that. I'm going to steal that.
Yeah, there's no copyright on the gospel, I always say.
But I think sometimes people look at a person like myself, and that's one of the reasons I didn't write this. One of the publishing folks that I worked with said, "Well, you should share more of this part of your story. That's going to, be fascinating for people." I said, the reason I don't want to do that is, most people haven't gone through events in their life that may have been that traumatic. But you know what? If people are being tripped up and held back, and I include my own kids in that, if they're, it doesn't matter if you're being tripped up by that or if you're being tripped up by something that is much less dramatic,
yeah,
but still keeps you in a victim mode, or keeps you in fear and keeps you held back. You've still been robbed of living your life to its fullest potential, which means you're not living your life to God's full potential in your life. What God's created you for,
yeah.
And so you may have noticed in my book, I know that probably not all of your listeners are people who have faith. Some are, but my book is not an overtly Christian, quote unquote, book, or overtly evangelical or whatever. But I cannot avoid sharing scriptural truths that have really created a foundation in my life for my faith journey. But they're principles I think people will find as they read the book, that regardless of their faith position, they're truths that are undeniable and very beneficial for them to engage with and live their life to their full potential. But you're exactly right. I have been through a lot, but sometimes I find people, it's not the amount that they've gone through, it's a mindset,
Yeah. Yeah, that's totally true. And I love that your faith is integrated in your understanding of your purpose. One of the things that most people don't realize, and the vast majority of the people that I work with, the millions of people that watch our TV show, Lifestyle, they understand within our system, we have a life coaching system that spells out the word aware, which stands for your attitude, wellness, activity, relationships. And the E of aware is existence. Why are you here? Where'd you come from? What's your purpose in life? Why do you exist? And we make no qualms about the fact that every life coach, Tony Robbins, Jack Canfield, Mark Victor Hansen, myself, all the ones who are legit out there helping millions of people, all of us say, in order to reach your highest levels of success, you have to have a direct connection with the divine. Now,
Absolutely.
you may have a very bad experience with a certain religion or denomination or local church or the practice or what you've been taught about the divine. And I completely understand that, because there are churches out there, I'm just abhorred at how they're representing God, because it's far from what the ancient scriptures actually say about the loving God that is real. What I do encourage our viewers and listeners to do is have an open mind, in the same way that you have an open mind about your success, your purpose, your journey in life. Just understand the God that you rejected is the same God that I've rejected, because if it is a God that's represented to you that can be rejected, it's not a true representation of who God is.
Could not
And
agree
so
more.
from
Absolutely.
from that standpoint, I respect your openness, David, to talk about how your direct connection with the divine has really helped you fulfill your divine calling and your divine purpose. And I just want to encourage the viewers, because most of you are in some ways reticent to hear the religious dogma, and I want to respect that. But at the same time, I just encourage you. I wouldn't be successful. David wouldn't be successful. Tony Robbins wouldn't be successful. He says he cannot reach the highest levels of success without a direct connection with the divine as well. So just understand there is a different representation of who God is. And once you see it, you'll get it, and you'll say, yes, I have supernatural help to actually help me connect with why I'm here. Why was I born at the time I was born, into the home that I was born into, under the conditions and the challenges that you had to face? It's all because you needed to be empathetic. You needed to understand from a personal standpoint the people that you were called to serve in your life calling, in your life purpose. And I see that in your life and in your work as well, David.
Thanks so much for sharing that. And I have to say, and maybe some of your listeners have had the same experience. When I was raised in this home I was raised in, they were super well-intended people. They really, frankly, didn't have a lot going on in terms of a relationship with God, and really a divine connection really in their life that much. But they made me go to church, and while some seeds were planted for me to get kind of what I would call maybe a holy curiosity that, is there a God and all that, it really turned me off much of what I experienced growing up in that little small fundamental event. It was a little Baptist church. I kind of felt the entire time I was there, it was more about what I shouldn't be doing in life and who I shouldn't be hanging out with, and
Yeah.
than it was what I should be doing and what my potential was and what possibilities there were. And so it was not until I was out of high school for a couple of years that I really, out of desperation, looking for answers. I was so sick of my life. I had tried everything. And I really, out of desperation, picked up a Bible and started reading it. And it was amazing. Some of the words I didn't understand. So I'd get a dictionary and look up the definition and reread the verse with the definition again. And I have to tell you, as simple and elementary as it was such a profound impact in my life. The wisdom that I gained from that, and it just completely, it created for me direction. It gave me a compass. It also gave me some amazing principles and values to apply to my life, because even if you have a purpose and you're very zealous about that purpose, and you're very focused and you have great goals, you have great work ethic, if that purpose isn't informed by a set of values that you're okay with, in other words, I see kind of your purpose and goals can at some level can be your engine for your life. But if you don't have a set of tracks that train's running on that take you where you ultimately want to go, so you say, well, what kind of family do you want? Like, I have a friend of mine whose father recently got sent to prison. Super wealthy guy. Everybody was shocked. It was white collar fraud. It was so much money that he got access to so easily, that he told me later. He said, I hate to admit it, I just couldn't say no. And what happened was he knew his purpose. He had the Midas touch in terms of an entrepreneur and a business leader, but he didn't have a compass. And here he continued to make more and more money, but cut corners, and ended up, he's now in a white collar prison, separated from his family. And everybody's still in shock. Nobody can believe it. But that's how important it is. Know what you believe. Whoever you are watching the show, it's so important come to terms with what your values are, because your beliefs will inform what you decide your purpose is. And one last thing I'd say about what you were just talking about, Roy, that I think is so important. One of the things I think a lot of, like I didn't hear much about this ever growing up in church, but it really ties to what you said a while ago. And if you, even if you just entertain the idea that there is a God and a creation story, just assume that for a minute. If you're watching this and that isn't your worldview, in the very beginning of Genesis, when God created man and woman, and he says, hey, here's this crazy, magnificent universe, which we all agree, even though it's partially destroyed now, you can imagine how pristine it was in the beginning. It's beautiful now. But one of his first words to us as human beings, I just think is amazing. And it's exactly what you just said a while ago, really. He said, okay, here it is. But he didn't say, hey, I hope everything goes okay. Hope you enjoy it. Hope it all works out. Those are all spectator kind of postures. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What he said was, okay, here's the world. I've given you your life. I've given you each other. Now go subdue this and take dominion of every living thing. Those are like military terms. It reminds me of the mantra the Navy SEALs use when they get airdropped into war-torn areas that are just in extreme chaos. They all stop and remind each other, remember, we're not here to survive this. We're here to take charge of this. That's the mindset you're talking about with that divine connection and guidance in your life. It's not a hope you survive this mentality in life. It's that abundant life that the scriptures talk about with us. I'm not here, Jesus said, to just give you life, but that you'd have life more abundantly. That's a take charge life. That's take dominion. Yeah. And so that's a different mindset completely.
Yeah, it really is. And it's really such a proactive approach. Yes. Where ultimately you're looking to say, how can the world around me be a better place if I focus not on myself, my own career, my own success? We try to share with people, I work with a lot of celebrities, professional athletes, and people. And one of the challenges in today's society is that we promote celebrity by, well, how many likes, how many clicks, what are they doing to get more attention? And so when we talk to them about what will really make them happy and what will finally bring joy, because there's no number of clicks or likes or follows that will truly make them happy. What truly makes people happy is when they look around them and say, I have a divine purpose and a divine platform that allows me to show people what love looks like. And the moment you allow yourself to stop and shift the focus away from yourself and say, how can I love the people around me and help them understand what love feels like from a selfless standpoint, the amount of joy that comes out of people who thought that happiness always comes from the externals, they realize that happiness cannot come from the outside. It always has to come from the inside. And the only way to experience that joy is by giving. It's never by having.
That's beautiful. Absolutely. I talk, as you know, a little bit about that in the book and the difference between happiness and joy. And happiness really comes from the word happenstance, which ties to if your circumstance is good, you're always as happy as your circumstances. How are things going? And I always kind of joke with people and say, you say, how's your day going? You say, well, days don't go, I go. Yeah. So, I define how my day is going. And the difference between happiness and joy is, the cool thing about joy is, even if I'm having a sucky day, and it's just everything's going wrong. Every time I live out my values, the ones you described a while ago, and live out those principles in my life, and I do what is I embrace as my highest purpose in my life, I derive great joy from that, in spite of the fact that I may be having this really sucky day.
Yeah.
My circumstances don't have to be great for me to have joy. And joy is so much more fulfilling because it's tied to having meaning in your life versus your circumstances, which is really a feeling. The first title I came up with the book was actually, Who Cares How You Feel? And I had some friends talk me out of it, say, you may have some people that get turned off to that. So I still added that tagline in there, land on your feet, not on your feelings. But it really comes down to that. I really, truly, that last section of the book, which is, it's so important in my opinion. I love the last defining attribute of gameness is having the will required to act beyond your feelings. It's just
Yeah.
imperative.
Yeah. I love all four of these defining actions that that really you go through the book. And if you don't mind, I'd love to just kind of give people a hint of what the book will talk about. And by the way, I hope you guys all get the book. The link is in the description below to help you be able to purchase this book for yourself. But the first of four is upgrade your perspective, a never quit mindset. What do you mean by a never quit mindset?
You know, it's a lot of for all of us. Nobody's born in a perfect setting. I mean, it's we all we get to thinking we're pretty smart and pretty bright and pretty clever. But when I speak at places, a lot of times I always ask this one question. I'll just say, if anybody here had anything to do with getting to Earth, please raise your hand. And of course, no one's ever raised their hand. And so we all end up showing up here in life, and we
Yeah.
had nothing to do with getting here.
Yeah.
It's kind of humbling. So whether you came, no matter what family you came in, we had nothing to do with all those defining characteristics on our driver's license, our hair color, our eye color, our height, our genetic code, our socioeconomic background, our family of origin issues. Yet all of those things. So when you're born in life, life is happening to you. So you kind of start life off as a victim in a way, because you are a victim to you had nothing to do with any of this. You had no control of any of it. So life's happening to you, and as life happens to you, you begin to formulate opinions and thoughts and feelings about that, which begins to eventually shape a worldview,
Yeah.
actually, and your
Yeah.
self-perception, your perception of authority, of your parents, of women, of men, of money, of work, of the world, of God. But what the problem with that is, that's all a reaction formation to things that happened to you. But you
Yeah.
reach a point in your life when you get into early adulthood or late teenage years, around 19 is typical. You've got to come to a point where you say, okay, yes, all those things happened. I had nothing to do with any of it. And yes, I did formulate a lot of opinions, perceptions, and worldviews. Am I okay with where acting those out is going to take me? Am I okay with where they're already taking me? And most of us would have to be honest and say no. So then what needs to happen? Well, you got to check in with your perspective and say, okay, while those things all did happen, your feelings are very real. I'm not saying don't validate those. Upgrade your perspective. And that's where I say, how can you see the things that have happened to you better and see your
Mhm.
current situation better? In fact, I love the words you used earlier about, I use the word harvesting what you have, but saying, okay, yeah, all those things happen, but how can I capitalize on those? How can I, you know, you read the story in my book, in that section of the book where I went and made the visit with my friend who has the apple orchard and Christmas tree farm in Vermont. And I broke my leg first day skiing there. And so I was at his house for a few weeks. I love apple cider, and it was the best I've ever had. I was drinking way too much of it. And one night I said, dude, I said, you got to tell me, how is apple cider made? Because I'm assuming you got to find like the perfect apples to select them to make this, because it's like the nectar of the gods.
Yeah.
And he looked at me kind of funny and he said, oh, that's funny. And I said, what? He said, you have no clue how apple cider is made. And I said, no, I don't. And he said, the irony of what you just asked is, the apples that get bruised and knocked off the tree by the storms, or the pickers accidentally bump them off, or they get packed too tight in boxes. In reality, it's the perfect shiny apples make it to the show shelf at the store. But these apples still make it to the store too, but not on that shelf. And he said, these are all the bruised and damaged apples. And so we either leave them on the ground there and they rot, or we pick them up and repurpose them, or like you said earlier, reframe them, put them in the apple press, and we make cider out of them. So he said, the crazy thing is, this stuff you love the most about apples is made from these damaged, bruised apples. And I went to bed that night and I thought, wow, God, what a beautiful picture of how you've taken me, who's done so many stupid things in my life, forgiven me, and redeemed me, which is another word for reframing and repurposing my life.
Yeah.
And so every time I see cider, I just smile, because sometimes we have a detour to our destiny, right?
Yeah.
And that's what
Yeah.
apple cider. So that's really what upgrading your perspective is. Don't let what's happened to you, and even the things that have happened that you've caused. There's a lot of mea culpa. I mean, some of the adversity and pain and stuff in my life, it isn't just stuff that happened to me. It's
Yeah.
stuff, poor decisions I made.
It
But
happened by me.
yeah, it happened by me. And so, regardless of how it happened, you got to pause and say, either you quit and surrender to that, or you pause and say, okay, yes, it happened. It feels crappy. It happened. I feel a lot of regret. I feel a lot of remorse. I don't like where I'm at. So upgrade your perspective and say, okay, but how can you harvest that? How can you make cider out of the bruises? And
Hmm.
because if you quit, it's over. You just lay there on the ground and rot. That's no
Yeah.
good.
I love that. I say it this way. I say life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you. Um,
Oh, I love that.
the reality is you're only as successful as your understanding of the problem. So I was coaching a couple of years ago, a very influential doctoral professor at a university who he was actually quite troubled by what I had said, when I had said to several of them, you know, you were placed exactly at the time, at the place, with the family, with the parents, with the siblings, with every situation in the neighborhood that you needed to be
Mm,
for your personal purpose. And he really struggled with that. And so he stayed by afterwards and was like, I really have to disagree with you. And I said, please tell me your story, because it's always about the story. That our
yeah.
understanding of the world is based on the story that we have we have read through our experiences. So I said, explain to me your story. He goes, well, he says, I was born to some parents who didn't want me, and I was given away. And then I was raised in another home, and they didn't keep me, and I bounced from home to home. And he said, so I just can't see a loving God saying that's what I'm going to put you through. And so I said, you're a university professor, right? He goes, yeah. And I said, why are you passionate? Because he was beyond retirement age. And I said, why are you passionate to still teach? You could retire. You know that. Why are you still doing it? What is it about the teaching environment that just draws you back and makes you feel like this is where I need to be? And he starts describing an experience of, well, there are a lot of students, especially nowadays, who don't have parents and they grew up without parents. And I find out about their story, and it's so good for me to be able to help these students. I understand the experience that they're going through, the internal feelings that they don't verbalize. He goes on and on
Mhm.
and on, and I'm sitting there like, you're making my point for me. But he didn't get it. He never. I mean, this guy is brilliant. A university professor was not making this connection that the only
Wow.
reason why he had to go through all that stuff was. And so I said to him, I said, are there any other professors that care about these students without parents as much as you do? And he goes, no, I'm the only one that actually even notices. I said, you're making my point for me. Your
Wow.
purpose is to be a parent to the parentless. You went through your experience because your entire purpose was to have year after year these groups of students that say, I don't have a parental figure, I don't have a father figure in my life that would understand my experience, and number two, even care enough to in some way be an
Mm,
adoptive parent to me during one of the most
mm.
crucial formative times of my life when I'm going through college. And I said, can you see it? And he goes, oh, I never thought of that. I said, your life didn't happen to you. Your life happened for you.
I
And the
love that.
more you understand that, the sooner you understand that. And I hope that the viewers who are watching this, who have gone through a lot of traumatic experiences growing up or in your life right now, this is all repurposed when you understand what your purpose is. That's why purpose is in the word repurposed, is because your life experience makes you qualified to talk to somebody. I would much rather send people to you, David, for family counseling, because you understand family counseling and the dangers of some of the issues that led to your experience. You can speak into them with a lot more passion and power than some of the people nowadays. And I respect everyone for going through the education, but there are people who aren't even married or have kids who are counselors, and I'm like, great, you keep on, but I hope one day you're married and have kids so that you can have this breadth of experience to
Yes.
bring to your sessions.
Wow, man, that's such good stuff. Right. I mean, I absolutely love that statement that you just made. And I, one of the other reasons I wanted that to be the first, when I was reading, and I kept pressing myself to find the one word, which was hard. When I read those
Yeah.
four defining attributes, the other reason I liked the never quit mindset was, once again, I didn't want this to be an overtly like religious book, but
Yeah.
it had to resonate and be consistent with my beliefs and values. And one of the things my wife and I have said to our five kids since they were born, and they could understand our conversations, was that we love them the way God loves us. And they would always say, what do you mean by that? I say, well, there's nothing you can ever do to make God love you any more or any less. God loves you unconditionally forever. And he has a never quit love. So that never quit mindset really kind of connects with that, because what you just said is, it's so important that we get that, because we need to relate to ourselves and others the way God relates to us. And one of the most
Yeah.
powerful, liberating things is to know, it's not a license for us to go out and live life with reckless abandon and not seek to honor God with our life. But even if we try to live to honor God with our life, we're going to make mistakes. We're going to fail.
Yes.
We're going to come up short. We're going to make poor choices. And what's the most important first thing to remember is he's right there, just like I am with my kids, saying to me, there's nothing you can do to make me love you any more, any less. And the first verse that I read when I started reading the Bible was a verse very closely connected to that. And as a kid who had been orphaned, you can understand why that verse was so powerful to me. It was Hebrews 13:8. And it said, Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever, regardless of what I do.
Hmm.
And I needed to know there was something that was a never quit, permanent anchor in my life. So I love that first defining attribute of gameness.
I do too. That's such a solid anchor too, which you have to have an anchor in order to not drift with whatever wind or current is going.
And,
The
and
second,
a lot of I'll end with this. A lot of people, the other reason I love that is a lot of people never start because they don't get that first point. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
They
yeah,
never get
yeah,
they never get to what's my purpose in life, because they become so overwhelmed with whatever has happened or wherever they are when they're thinking of starting.
yeah,
And so that never quit mindset. Look, don't you got to keep going. I know you don't even know where
yeah,
you're going yet, but first
yeah.
things first, harvest what you got. Now, you were going to ask the question about the second
Yeah,
section of the book.
and I'm glad you said that, because I want to reiterate uh this first definition of upgrade your perspective and never quit mindset. It's all about perspective. Perspective is your reality. And so if you're looking at, hey, it sounds nice for these guys to talk about, hey, just be positive and go on. That the reality is your perspective is your reality. And so that's why we're saying shift that perspective, reframe, figure out what is it that you're currently focused on. And if the focus is leading you into negative, hopelessness, despair, uh, stop looking at what you're looking at, and shift your perspective, upgrade your perspective, as David says in his book, and that will help you get into this never quit mindset. Then you go into fulfill your potential, resoluteness to a purpose. So, how do you define fulfilling your potential?
Well, the first part of that is I have this quote I've kept on a little plaque for over 30 years. I want my kids to see it. I want my staff to see it. And it says, only those who see the invisible will do the impossible. And so a lot of times in our lives, whatever it is we are thinking about, dreaming about, or we're thinking about whether or not they should even try to have a dream or whatever, it's daunting. It sounds too challenging. And it's like, it sounds like fairy tale thinking or whatever. And so you got to see the invisible before you can do the really hard work, which can seem impossible.
Yeah.
And so that's the very first step. But what I try to get people to think about is everything that's built in life is built twice. Once it's built in somebody's mind, they imagine what that table could look like, and they draw out plans, then they build it. Everything's built twice. There's a great verse in the Bible that I know you must be familiar with, and it says, without a vision, the people shall perish.
Yeah.
And the opposite of the word perish is to thrive. So with a vision, and in other words, getting a mental picture, like you said a while ago, yes, your reality may suck. Your perspective doesn't have to suck. I mean, you can say, okay, wait a minute. How am I going to view that? Am I going to be the professor who views my life as woe is me and I got passed around by a bunch of families? Or am I going to say, wow, I was uniquely positioned with my early life experiences to better understand and uniquely understand all of these brokenhearted kids who are being
Yeah.
passed around and help them. So it depends on your perspective. You can see it
Yeah.
one way or the other, and it makes all the difference. Well, now, if you can get past that, say, okay, I'm not going to let my past rob me of my future. So then you got to ask yourself, what's your future? And you got to say, I'm not here to be a problem to be solved. I'm here to be a potential to be realized. The rest of the canvas hasn't been painted on. So you got to do, in my opinion, two things. One, think about what are your gifts and talents and abilities that God has given you. Start thinking about your possibilities and potential, but you've also got to ask yourself the higher question to say, what's my ultimate purpose? Not just maybe what's my vocational purpose and giftedness and what I might be successful at here on the earth. That's important because those are
Yeah.
the God-given gifts you've been given. But if you don't have the higher purpose question answered, then as I said earlier, you aren't going to have the compass. You may have an engine, but if you don't have the right compass, you can still end up going really fast and really efficiently to the wrong place.
Really, of course. Yeah. I love that. There's a couple of things with purpose that seems to be coming up consistent for me. People don't know necessarily how to discover their purpose. I share with them, and on the surface level, as we're just introducing them to seeking their purpose and their resoluteness to a purpose, as you say. I ask people, what are you passionate about in the area of serving, in the area of helping other people live a better life? What is something you just can't stop thinking about? It just keeps coming up, and you're passionate, and other people may not seem as passionate as you are about a certain way of serving mankind, of showing them what love really feels like and looks like, from people doing things in a non-transactional way to make someone else's life better. Those are probably the biggest keys to unlocking the doors to your life purpose and understanding why were you made the way that you were made, to be passionate about things no one else is passionate about, is because your purpose is somehow encapsulated into those passions of serving other people. On top of that, there are methodologies, things that you've wanted to do, and whether that's something as crazy as graphic design, artwork, or doing something with working with animals or whatever it is, that you're putting in the 10,000 hours, even though they seem very unrelated. Those things tend to come together in some way to serve humanity and ultimately to reveal to you, this is why you were made the way that you were made, wired the way you're wired, experienced the way that you have become experienced in life, in order to serve mankind in this not only passionate way, but also in a prepared way, because you have the skills, you've put in the 10,000 hours in the skill sets that you needed to do it in a unique way that no one else has done it before.
You said earlier, I think it ties to this perfectly. You know, you what you were born for. So kind of back to those events that have happened in our life. So what about those events make you uniquely qualified to do something unique? Okay, you
Yeah.
pointed it out beautifully with that professor, but it's true of all of us. And a lot of people say, well, I'm not that professor and I didn't go through that dramatic stuff that David or the professor. You don't have to.
Not at all.
It's as simple as what you just said. I love the passage in the Bible where Jesus sends the disciples in and said they're all hungry. Like, yeah, we got to get something to eat. And they said, we'll go in and get some food. You stay here. And so he's there and he starts talking to this woman at a well. And, they're talking and, he ends up, having a great opportunity to really show her love and to show her grace and forgiveness in her life and help her understand he's clearly aware of a lot of the poor decisions she's made and kind of where she's at in her life right now. And he's, doing what he's there called and energized to do, and that's show love and he's living out his purpose. He's living out his calling. Well, the disciples come back and they got all this great food. I'm sure it smells good. And Jesus sent them into town to get food. They're all hungry. He come back and they're like, aren't you going to eat? And he says what to them? I've got meat. I have meat and drink that you know not of. It's meat and drink for me to do the will of the Father. And it reminded me of when I was a kid playing basketball after school. I'd play till it was dark, and the thing I dreaded most was for my mom to call me and say it's dinner time. I'd like, no, no, it's don't. Because I was being so energized and fed by getting to keep playing ball. And even though my body was hungry, I hadn't eaten since the lunch physiologically.
Yeah.
But here's the thing I challenge people with to go along with what you said. I was really struggling with this at one point in my life. And I was praying. I said, God, what am I supposed to do with my life? And like, I've got to make a living. It isn't just like, what am I interested in? And so I've read a book called What Color's Your Parachute? It's an old book that helps
Yep.
you get in touch with some of those things. And I was reading a lot of books. I read that book, Arnold Palmer's First Sports Agent, forget his name now, but he was the first professional sports agent, but he wrote a book called What They Don't Teach You at Harvard Business School. And I was reading a lot of different things, really just desperate, really, like, God, what is my thing, And maybe some people listening to this tonight or sitting at home tonight, going, what is my purpose? And what you said a while ago, like, what is that thing that really energizes you? Don't complicate this. And here's one thing that I read in this book that hit me. It said, think about something that people have said pervasively about you over time, going back as far as you can remember to your childhood even. What if people said in one way or another, like, David, you're really good at that. Don't minimize that.
Right.
And tie that to what you said. What is that kind of like really gives me joy and energizes me? And I find myself like that professor. I can't retire. I love this too much. If you can tie those two together, you're probably really close to finding it. And for me, it was what you said earlier. I kind of knew what I was, for because of what I'd gone. Those were my unique earlier life experiences. Gave me a lot of passion about caring for people going through what I'd been through. But one of the things I came up with was, and it was weird at first, I said, the thing that was consistent all those years was I had good ideas, which
Yeah.
sounded like, what do I do with that? But piece by piece, what I decided to do is get a job and start doing something, working with those families that you were so passionate about, and kind of trust the process from there. And what happened was I kept coming up with good ideas for program ideas to work with these families. And my bosses saw that and said, you need to be running this. I'm like, oh no, I've never even had a business class. I got a degree in religion and a degree in counseling. No, this is what you're destined for. I said no for 5 years. I finally did it just because my wife and I started having kids. I needed to make more money and I was scared to death to try it. But wow, my boss was right. I was wrong. And sure enough, really what's kind of been the bedrock of, whatever, successes I've had have really all at the core of all of them have been innovation, ideas, which went back to that. So I think what you just said is so important. And I guess I just have such a passion for helping people discover those, because seeing people advance their potential and purpose in life, what's more exciting than that?
Yes. It is the most rewarding thing to do. And what people don't understand is these abilities that you have, these passions that you have. Most people have never sat down and tried to draw the lines towards. So how does this help people live a better life? How does this help people to truly overcome some of their life challenges? Once you draw those lines from whatever it is, it may be car racing, it auto mechanics, it may be painting, it may be teaching, whatever it is. If you can just sit down and draw the line from what I'm passionate about to the people that I'm passionate about serving.
Yes.
All life coaches, Tony Robbins, all of them say, if you figure that out, you will not be poor a day in your life because you bring such value to other people. They will be willing to pay you for what you're bringing into their life.
Couldn't say it better.
Yeah.
And it sounds simplistic, but it is so true. I hope people listening to this will just trust what you just said and just take some baby steps toward that. Trust what we're saying. You don't have to have it all figured out. If you'd have told me when I started down that pathway, I was scared to death. If you'd have told me I was one day going to be a CEO of, one of the largest, human services organization, I would have just laughed out loud.
And you would have had a stress attack too.
Oh my gosh, I would have. Yeah. I just took little baby steps. So don't get frozen in fear. Step out, have faith, trust what you've been through, trust what you're passionate about, and find a way to take a step forward.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're looking at all the things that have to take place before you do it, you have what they call the paralysis of analysis, because
Yes,
you're analyzing every little thing that's got to just that it is a divine calling, it's a divine purpose, whatever you're doing. If you're stepping forward to say, how can I show people the highest form of love and uphold their dignity and help them live a better life, that the blessing comes along with that mindset. So don't get paralyzed by all the analysis that you have to do. Just understand you were made this way to do these things. So just relax into, yeah, it's going to be a lot of work. It's going to be challenging. I'm going to have to work on myself. I'm going to have
yes,
to help myself be the best resource and asset
yes,
to the community that I'm called to serve. But it's all about saying, but am I serving or am I self-serving?
absolutely.
And that's a huge challenge. The third defining attribute that is a definition of gameness is tackle your problems a fighting spirit. How do you define tackling your problems?
As I said earlier, I'll go a little further with that. The first point is to stop and say, we tend to have a fear response to problems.
Yeah.
And in that fear response, we just tend to get in the mindset of, oh my gosh, and it's the mindset of this problem, you know, having power over me in some way, versus, yes, that's a problem. And this may not be fun what I'm about to enter into here, but you got to ask yourself, how can this situation create power, grow power in me,
Yes.
versus a mindset of I just got to try to keep that thing from having power over me. And that's a hugely different mindset. And really, there's three responses you can have when adversity or problems come. And that is, one, you can just surrender right up front, right out of the gate. I give up. Second, you say, I'm not going to surrender. So I'm going to try to survive. So I'm just going to try to get over the hump. I'm going to try to get through. That kind of is resilience. I'll keep bouncing back. You can't keep me down. Well, a woman experiencing domestic violence, and I don't mean to be insensitive, can be at a level of resilience if she keeps coming back every day and subjecting herself to that treatment. And you
Yeah.
maybe get more durable, but that's not gameness. That's
No.
not learning from this and moving forward in a positive way. So you don't want to surrender. Surviving is really not what God's called us to do. We talked earlier about, he said, hey, go subdue it and take dominion. So don't surrender, but also don't just try to survive it. Have a subdue mentality, which means I'm going to find a way to get better, smarter, stronger, more resourceful. And I hate saying all that because people listening could go, oh, that sounds so cliches for your book. I really mean what I'm saying. What I'm saying is tackle your problems means take action. Don't try to avoid getting tackled. Don't try to dodge the hit. Don't try to limb back or deflect it. Engage and say, there's no way I can get stronger physically unless I enter into some type of resistance training. So I can do push-ups, I can do pull-ups, I can do presses, I can use cables. I don't care what you use. The only way my muscles get stronger is against resistance pushing the other way. So that's what adversity is. So in life, it's the same way. You don't grow any mental muscle, spiritual muscle, emotional muscle, relationship muscle outside of tension and resistance. So it's like, it's not fun. Nobody likes to go to the gym,
Yeah.
but endorphins aren't free, right? And
Yeah.
getting healthier is not, nobody's going to do that for me. It's like, I got to engage in this. But it's what feels better than a relationship that's been tested and renegotiated and forgiveness has happened and we've learned more about each other and we learn and grow and the bond gets deeper. And it's like, wow, the only way to get to that deeper bonded relationship was what? Walking through our imperfections and the stress of the adversity. It's the same in life. Nobody gets better in their business until they're tested.
Yeah.
So that's what this is about, is have a fighting spirit, and it's just critical.
I love that. The people I work with are probably tired of hearing me say this, but one of my main mantras is comfort is the enemy of greatness. You have to be uncomfortable if you want to be great. And it's just what you talked about with weightlifting, bodybuilding, your physical fitness. It's all about getting as uncomfortable as you can, and then the body responds. Well, it's the same way with your psyche. If you're always seeking comfort psychologically, emotionally, you're going to be weak psychologically and emotionally. The true strength comes from resistance training. And if you're not getting yourself out there and understanding that, yeah, there's going to be problems that I'll have to face when I go out here, but understanding what you say, this subdue mindset is to say, it doesn't matter. It's not going to own me. That's the only way in that state of discomfort that you're ever going to reach your greatness, is because you're not running away from it. You're running toward it and saying, I'm going to tackle you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And you're teeing up the last section beautifully.
Yeah, absolutely. Which brings us to master your performance, the will required to act. So what's your definition of master your performance?
You know, I love William James, old philosopher, psychologist. And one of the things he was often fond of saying was, I don't sing because I'm happy. I'm happy because I sing. And if you read a lot of his readings, kind of what I came to with his kind of overall philosophy of life, I just love, and it is this. We must, if we're going to live our life to its fullest potential, do one thing, and that is learn to act our way to new ways of feeling rather than trying to feel our way to new ways of acting. It's really a lot what you just talked about. And so if you're always looking to, your feelings first, you're in trouble. My feelings are fickle, and my feelings would never take me to the gym. Maybe every
Yeah.
now and then.
Yeah.
But my will can take me to the gym. And when I subdue my feelings and my will's in charge, and my will takes me to the gym, endorphins aren't free, but my will takes me there and I earn those endorphins. I feel amazing. I feel like I took a drug. I come out of there and it's fantastic. My feelings are great. My
Yeah.
feelings will always match my actions. And
Yeah.
so feelings are great servants. They're horrible masters. And I mean, they're great servants because I can go listen to Tony Robbins. I can go listen to Roy Ice. I can go listen to Jack Canfield. And there's times I need that. Matter of fact, I do that. I do listen to you guys. And because I need to be motivated in my spirit, I do need to help me think bigger and better thoughts and see that invisible a little more clear so I can do the impossible. But at some point, I've got to act on what that is. And so they're great servants, they're great supporters. But, one of the most powerful things in the Bible to me is, and I always told my kids this, I say, Jesus didn't feel like dying on the cross for you. I'm like, what? Like, no. I said, if you go to the Garden of Gethsemane the night before he died, he's matter of fact frustrated. He's got his 12 best friends there, the disciples saying, can't you guys even pray with me an hour? You're over there sleeping. He's over there sweating drops of blood in the deepest state of angst you can get in. And his prayer to God was, Father, if this cup could pass, and there could be a plan B, basically, he didn't use those exact words, but if my purpose could be accomplished without going to that cross, that'd be great. But if your will be done, listen to that, your will be done, not his at the moment. You know what I'm saying? I mean, his feelings were like anxious. He was, and he said, but not my will be done, but yours. And he said, and then it said, for the joy set before him, he went on and endured the cross. We talked earlier about the difference between joy and happiness. He didn't go because it was a happy moment on the cross. He didn't feel like that. When he was on the cross, he was in anguish and taking on the burdens of the world. But what he did, and his greatest act of obedience was his moment of his lowest point of feelings. Right? Think about that. Yeah. That's amazing to me. His greatest moment of accomplishment and victory, he had to walk through his most difficult, most painful feelings. But when he did, the joy was set before him after he endured the cross. And I think that's a principle of life for all of us. Like, we're all going to have, metaphorically speaking, crosses every day. And you're like, okay, is this one of those moments where I got to take some action to get the joy?
Yeah.
And that's a liberating truth. It's liberating for me because I don't have to feel like going to the gym anymore. I don't have to
Yeah.
feel like doing something sacrificial for a friend or serving somebody or giving sacrificial. I don't feel like being generous all the time. But man, when I'm generous, like gosh, nothing feels better. I don't always feel like eating mostly fruits and vegetables and like healthier food. Who does not want to just live on pizza and Coke and candy at the moment, but you feel like crud afterwards and you feel like $1 million when you're eating that healthy. It's that kind of thing. And the bottom line is, you know, in our society, one of the things that concerns me is what you touched on earlier, Roy, and that's just we want to be comfortable. We don't want people to even make us uncomfortable with anything they say.
Yeah.
You know, we don't say things that might be different from what I feel or that might offend me. It's like we're so hypersensitive, and it's hurting us. You
Yes.
know, I was counseling a young lady and her mom. I won't go into the story, but I ended up having to confront both of them. Mom was trying to get her own needs met, being her daughter's friend instead of her mother after the dad divorced her, and the daughter kind of blamed the mom on the divorce, and she was working it for all it's worth, no boundaries, getting out of control quickly. And I finally told them both, look, you're not willing to be a mother and hold her accountable. You know, Erica, you're not willing to be her daughter. You're taking advantage of her. Like I'm terminating counseling. It's over. And unless you guys change and you're willing to. Well, a few weeks later, they called me and said, okay, we're ready. They came back. We kind of contracted together to really, mom became mom, daughter submitted to that. And as scary as it was, and hard as it was to give up her rebellious freedom, she came to have a relationship with her mom, which is what she sobbed and cried and told her mom she wanted. I don't want you to be my friend. I want you to be my mom. I want to feel safe.
Yeah.
Well, we terminated counseling after they got to that new place. And about a month or so after, it was Christmas time, and they came by my office, left a mug with my assistant, and it was full of candy. And my assistant said, hey, there's that lady and her daughter came by, and they left you a gift. And I went in, and there was this giant coffee mug. And on the mug, it said, true friends will tell you when you have broccoli in your teeth. And because I confronted them, and I hurt both their feelings. They got upset with me. But that's the way the truth is sometimes. But you know, the truth is, as the Bible tells us, you know, if you know the truth will what?
Set you free.
Set you free. But none of us like to hear the truth all the time. But man,
No.
I want to be free. I want to be my best. And that requires discipline. It requires those unpleasant times. Sometimes it requires enduring it or difficult crosses in our life. But
Yeah.
if we're gonna do any of the first three parts of this book, right? The one thing you've got to do is come to the point that you have the will required to act beyond your feelings. And that's what it means to master your performance. Because if you're going to be successful in life, if you're going to be successful in your divine calling, if you're going to be successful in marriage, as a friend, in your business, feelings can't be in charge. They're horrible bosses. They're great servants. You got to come to the point that you fire your feelings and promote your purpose and put your will in charge under the authority of that purpose. That's the secret to success. And I'm sure you talk a lot about that with your clients.
This is huge. I hope all of you right now will go down to the description link and click on the link to get David Dennis's book, Gameness, Land on Your Feet, or excuse me, yeah, I had it right. Land on your feet, not on your feelings. And I hope you guys grab that as quickly as you can. It's going to help you. The sooner that you go through this material, that the less results of not following this advice is going to play out in your life. But David, you also have a website that people can go to right now as well. Talk to us about
Yes.
that.
Yeah. If you go to Gameness, Gameness, just like it sounds, gamenessleadership.com. It'll talk about the book. You can even download a first couple of introduction and a chapter for free. If you buy books and buy like bulk orders, there's an automatic calibration that gives you a discount on when you buy higher volume. It happens automatically. My bio is there. You can also, if you have an interest in reaching out to me for speaking or coaching or anything like that, I'm happy to talk with you or to do a podcast interview or television interview, things like that. So that's the website for the book, but it also has got information for me. Then you can reach out to me there, or you can email me at. Well, you can. There's a link there to contact me there through my email as well.
That's awesome. Well, I hope everyone connects with you in some way, because your insight and your coaching input is just priceless. Thank you so much for spending this time with me and our viewers, David.
I'll add to this what you said earlier. I was going to mention at the end of each chapter, my editor for the book really did a great job helping me formulate some really thoughtful questions. I can't take credit for the quality of those questions. He really pushed me on that, and I really appreciate it, because the extra time it took to come up with those added great value to the book, I felt. So there's 5 or 6, it's not exhaustive, but there's 5 or 6 really good questions at the end of each chapter that, as Roy suggested, whether you take time to just read and do some personal reflection privately, and journal some on that, or get together with a group. I've got a number of people in organizations that are actually using this in their book club, or teams, leadership teams are using, and then discuss those questions with each other and kind of push each other to think through those in terms of personal application. I've even got some guys in prisons using this, and I've received some really touching comments about them kind of realizing they can be repurposed to make cider out of the bruises and decisions that they've made. I've got some young ladies in treatment centers that are using it. I actually went out and sat in a discussion group with them recently. A lot of fun. Some business leaders are using it with their teams. So it's been fun to see how it's being utilized by folks. But I'm going to say, Roy, thank you for seeing the value in the message, and giving me the opportunity just to hang out with you and discuss these. Most importantly, I know that I share with you our ultimate goal and desire is not for somebody to buy my book, but for them to really seize these principles and apply them to their life, because both of us, more than anything, we really want to see you advance the potential and purpose for your life and find real joy and hopefully some happiness along with it. But whether there's that or not, real joy in your life. And so thank you all for listening to the show tonight.
That's amazing. And that's why we're here. So thank you so much, David. To get more content like this, definitely go to our website, lifestyle.org. There you'll find other podcasts. You'll find some of our television broadcast episodes of Lifestyle as well, and a huge blog that will help you in many, many areas of your life that you're trying to improve. Thanks for going on this journey with us. Don't miss the next episode right here at the lifestyle.org podcast.